Hello and welcome. This is Wilrens for Create the Learning Site, the place to go deeper in your understanding of the Bible. It is one of the strangest portions of the Old Testament, Ezekiel 40 through 48. 14 years into the exile, after 12 years of silence, Ezekiel received one more vision. There would be an additional short prophetic word 2 years later, Ezekiel 29. However, the vision is far more extensive, 9 chapters, and it's placed at the end of the book. It functions as the grand finale of Ezekiel. The vision contains 3 main elements. First, the prophet witnesses the measuring of a temple. This includes the vision of God moving in and taking up residence in this temple. Second, the prophet receives instructions for the priests, the prince, not king, the Levites and the people. These amount to an alternative, even if only partial, Torah, mostly limited to the sacrificial cult and festivals. And then third, there's a re-allotment of the land of Israel. This includes a holy district or portion of 25,000 by 20,000 cubits, half of it for the temple and half of it for the Levites. South of this is a portion for the city, measuring 25,000 by 5,000 cubits, and thus completing the square, 25,000 by 25,000. To the east and the west of this portion is land for the prince. What does all of this mean? What brought me to contemplate this vision is another strange book, Ezekiel's Hope, a commentary on Ezekiel 38 through 48 by Jacob Milgrom, published in 2012. Milgrom is best known for his 3-volume commentary on the book of Leviticus, but toward the end of his life he turned his attention to the final chapters of Ezekiel. Now, unfortunately, Milgrom passed away before he could complete his study. It was published after his death by Daniel Block, himself famous for an extensive commentary on the whole book of Ezekiel. Some sections in the book are hardly more than study notes and read accordingly. Other parts are incredibly detailed. Most of us probably don't want to know that much. It's not really a book to read. However, it did give me a renewed and deepened sense of the mystery of Ezekiel's vision. A significant part of its strangeness has to do with its obvious and abundant departure from Torah. How is it possible for a true prophet of Yahweh to depart from God's Torah? Reputedly, Rabbi Hananiah ben Hezekiah burned 300 barrels of oil for his lamp in his effort to harmonize Moses and Ezekiel. Now, Milgrom did not set out to harmonize, but to understand. Why the differences? What is the message? I'm still digesting all of it, so I can only give a very incomplete report. Well, in fact, anyone who pretends to have a clear and certain interpretation of Ezekiel's temple vision, certain end-time books come to mind, probably did not even begin to understand this material at all. So what I'm going to do is share a few highlights and takeaways. Striking is the absence of familiar items. There appears to be no Ark of the Covenant. In fact, of the familiar temple furnishings, only the altar of burnt offerings remains. There's no high priest. In addition, there's no king, or to be more precise, the ruler of Israel is not referred to as king. A different term is used, often translated as prince. This equals a demotion. Well, I guess we can say the kings of Israel deserved this. The detailed prescriptions for sacrifices and the accompanying grain and oil offerings differ almost consistently from those in Leviticus and Numbers. No specific instructions for drink offerings are given. It's mentioned only once, the drink offering. Of the feasts, only Passover, New Moon, and Sabbath are mentioned. The Feast of Booths is not named but referred to in one verse, 45:25. And then it gets even stranger. The Passover includes numerous features of the Day of Atonement. Milgrom argues that Ezekiel has effectively combined these two into one. The redistribution of the land and the holy portion means that the temple is located outside of the city on top of a very high mountain. And according to Ezekiel 44, the Levites guard the gates. They also slaughter the sacrifices being brought by the people, which in Leviticus the people do themselves. In the inner court, only Zadokite priests are allowed to operate. Now, all of this is in consequence of how these groups behaved before the exile. And then the altar of burnt offering stands exactly at the center of the temple complex, assuming that it stands at the center of the inner court, which seems likely. What are we to make of Ezekiel's final vision? One thing is clear. The vision as a whole indicates that God is not giving up. There is a future. As Milgrom's title makes clear, it is Ezekiel's hope for his people. In Milgrom's notes, there's much more than the strangeness and differences listed above. He digs deep to compare Ezekiel with its parallels in Leviticus and Numbers, and to find explanations as to why Ezekiel would differ from Moses. A key observation to make in this respect is that the vision includes an explicit aim, most clearly formulated in Ezekiel 43, verse 10 and 11. I'll read it. As for you, Son of Man, describe to the house of Israel the temple, that they may be ashamed of their iniquities, and they shall measure the plan. And if they are ashamed of all that they have done, make known to them the design of the temple, its arrangement, its exits, and its entrances, that is, its whole design, and make known to them as well all its statutes and its whole design and all its laws, and write it down in their sight, so that they may observe all its laws and all its statutes and carry them out. As a quick aside, you're looking here at the Western Wall in Jerusalem, what's left of the Second Temple, which also features on the cover of Milgrom's book. I don't know if you noticed it. He's updated it according to Ezekiel's vision with water flowing from this location and green, the trees, but it's essentially this location on the cover of the book as well. So the detailed plan of the temple and its reformed cult is meant to cause shame and remorse. Repeatedly in these chapters, rebuke and correction are expressed. A number of changes contribute to an increase in separation. Ezekiel intensifies regulations, which is meant to secure the holiness and purity of the temple and its priests. They are almost entirely separated from the ordinary people. The king's palace no longer borders the temple area. The temple is no longer within the city walls. The inner court is inaccessible to both ordinary people and even Levites. Admittedly, the text speaks of observe and carry out. One could of course argue that all of this is to be taken literally and it is to be fulfilled in a distant future and in a temple that is yet to be built. This is unlikely, fits poorly with the New Testament, it fits not at all with Hebrews, which sees no more need for any such cult, or with John's vision of the final future, which knows of a city of God, but not of a temple in it or nearby. More likely, Ezekiel envisions an ideal future in priestly and Levitical terms, incorporating lessons based on pre-exilic transgression. So the people he is with may mend their ways. After all, the vision is not given for a future generation, but for Ezekiel's contemporaries. It is to them that he is told to describe it, and they are to be ashamed and observe the new laws. Without the temple, they could not possibly do this in any literal way. Even as Christians who are called to contemplate the statutes and the design of the temple and let them inform our behavior, but not in a literal sense. This, by the way, is a model of the second temple after it had been enlarged by Herod the Great. At the same time, the intensification of the Levitical holiness code in Ezekiel, although it has its purpose, is unlikely to produce true holiness. The increased separation defeats the purpose of relationship and communion. In a sense, it serves not so much as a tentative solution as to bring out the problem even more clearly. With all of this, Ezekiel prepared the ground for the true solution to be revealed in the New Testament. In his temple, only one cult object remained, the altar where atonement is made, and now stands in the center. In addition, Passover and the Day of Atonement are brought together, combining the ideas of redemption and liberation with substitution and purgation. All of this points forward to what Jesus will accomplish on the cross. The perfect version of Ezekiel's improved but still insufficient answer to Israel's and humanity's consistent failure to live true holiness. Although in a literal sense Jesus looks nothing like what Ezekiel described, he is the true temple and priesthood, reuniting heaven and earth, God and humanity.
The show will be starting in just a few moments. Thank you for your patience. The show will be starting in just a few moments.